It was 2:10 a.m. when I first felt it, the unmistakable sense that something had shifted. It wasn't the sound of the clock ticking or the quiet hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. It wasn't the temperature dropping, nor was it a strange noise in the house. It was just a feeling, deep in my gut, that something wasn't right. I was lying there, staring at the ceiling, wide awake for no apparent reason. Marissa was beside me, her breathing slow and steady, so peaceful. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone, that something else was happening, something I wasn't seeing. I reached over to my nightstand to check my phone, mostly out of habit. At first, I thought it was a missed notification or maybe a work email that had slipped through. But no, it was a message. A message from Marissa. I stared at the words, trying to make sense of them. "It's none of your business where I go." I read the text over and over again, each time growing more confused. I didn't want to wake her up, but something about those words cut deep. Marissa and I had never had a relationship where secrets were kept. We were open with each other, maybe to a fault. We knew everything about one another. So why was she texting me something like that at 2 a.m.? Where was she going? Why was it suddenly none of my business? I thought maybe it was a typo. Maybe she was half asleep when she sent it. I typed out a quick response. "What do you mean? Where are you going?" But after sending it, I immediately felt foolish. What was I even worried about? Maybe she had just been out with friends. Maybe I was overthinking things. But the unease didn't go away. If anything, it only grew stronger. I waited for her response, and the minutes passed slowly. 10 minutes went by, then 20. I kept staring at my phone, wondering why she hadn't responded. I glanced over at her. She was still sound asleep, her face relaxed, completely unaware of the anxiety that was growing inside me. I texted her again. This time, it felt more urgent. "Are you okay? Where are you?" Nothing. No reply. I stared at the screen, unable to focus on anything else. This was strange. Something was wrong. I pulled myself out of bed and paced around the room, the silence deafening. I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for her message to come through, but it didn't. My thoughts started to spiral. What if she was in trouble? What if something had happened to her? I picked up my phone and called her. It rang once, twice, 3 times before going to voicemail. That didn't make sense. Why wouldn't she pick up? I called again, my fingers shaking as I pressed the buttons. No answer. I called again. And again. No response. This was not like her. Marissa always answered. We never went to sleep angry or upset with each other. So why wasn't she answering? And that's when it happened. I got another message. But this one wasn't from her. It was from an unknown number. "Stop asking questions, Ted. You don't want to know what's really going on." My heart skipped a beat. Who the hell was this? What was going on? I stared at the message, completely stunned. I thought about calling the number back, but something held me back. Was this some sort of prank? Or was it something darker? I looked back at Marissa, still fast asleep. Could she be involved in whatever this was? I tried calling her again. No answer. The minutes ticked by. My mind was racing, and I couldn't focus on anything. I had no idea what was happening, but I knew I had to figure it out. I wasn't going to just sit here and wait. Then, a third message came through, and my blood ran cold. "You should have never started asking questions, Ted. Now you've gone too far." What the hell was going on? Was she in danger? My phone buzzed again. This time, it was another message, this time from Marissa. It was short, and the words burned into my mind like a brand. "Leave me alone. You're not going to find me." The finality in those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't breathe. My thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion and fear. Where was she? Why was she telling me to leave her alone? And why had someone else sent me messages like that? I was left staring at my phone, my heart racing, as the night stretched on. Nothing made sense. Nothing felt real. And I was left in the dark, desperately trying to piece it all together. I wish I could say that after the strange text and the cryptic messages, I calmed down and decided to just wait. But that wasn't the case. The more I tried to rationalize it, the more the pieces didn't fit. Marissa had never been like this. We had always been open, communicative. She wouldn't just send me a message like that out of nowhere, not without some sort of explanation. I stood in the living room, phone in hand, staring at the glowing screen, trying to make sense of everything. The silence of the house was deafening. I could still hear the faint sound of Marissa's breathing from the bedroom, but it felt distant, almost as if it was coming from somewhere far away. I walked back to the bedroom, my feet moving on their own. When I opened the door, I couldn't believe what I saw. Marissa was still asleep, but something was off. She was lying on her back, her eyes closed, her expression peaceful. Too peaceful. But there was something else, a slight tremor in her hand, as if she was clutching something in her sleep. I leaned in closer, trying not to wake her. My heart was pounding, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. That's when I saw it. A small, folded piece of paper tucked under her pillow. Without thinking, I carefully slid the paper out, trying not to disturb her. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. The handwriting was messy, hurried, as though whoever had written it was in a rush. You've been asking too many questions, Ted. It's already too late. She's not who you think she is. I felt a chill run down my spine. The paper was cold, and the words on it seemed to echo in my mind. I read it again and again, trying to understand what it meant. Who wrote this? What did it mean that Marissa wasn't who I thought she was? I glanced back at her, still sound asleep. My mind was racing. I needed answers, but it felt like every time I tried to find one, another question appeared, deeper and more unsettling than the last. I tucked the paper back under the pillow, careful not to wake her. I had no idea what this was about, but I knew I had to get to the bottom of it. Whatever was going on, it was clear that Marissa was involved in something much bigger than I could have ever imagined. I stepped back into the living room and tried to collect myself. I couldn't stay here, just waiting around, feeling helpless. I needed to do something. I needed to find out where she had been, what was really going on. But before I could make a plan, my phone buzzed again. It was a call from an unknown number. Without hesitation, I picked it up. "Hello," I said, my voice shaky but determined. There was a long pause before I heard a voice, low and distorted, like it was coming through a bad connection. "You don't understand yet, do you? It's already started, and you're too far gone to turn back now. Marissa isn't yours anymore." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. My mind was spinning. What did that mean? What was going on with my wife? Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, trying to process what had just happened. Who was that? What did they mean by Marissa isn't yours anymore? The dread I had been feeling earlier was now a full-blown panic. I had to know what was going on. I had to find her. But where could she be? And why was she being so secretive? I tried calling her again, my fingers trembling as I dialed her number. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. Again, I left a message, my voice breaking as I spoke. "Marissa, please. Please pick up. I don't know what's going on, but I need to hear from you. I'm scared. Please, just tell me what's happening. I love you. Please don't shut me out." The silence that followed was suffocating. I waited for a response, but none came. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit here, waiting for her to answer. I had to go to her, find out where she was, and get the truth. But as I stood up, ready to leave, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was another message. "If you want the truth, come to the old cabin. Don't waste time. She's waiting." I froze. The old cabin? I hadn't thought about that place in years. It was a small, secluded house in the woods where we used to go on weekends, just the two of us. But why would she be there now? And why had she been hiding it from me? The knot in my stomach tightened as I grabbed my jacket and ran out the door. I didn't know what I was going to find when I got there, but I couldn't ignore this feeling anymore. I had to go. The drive to the cabin felt endless. Every minute that passed only made my anxiety worse. The road was dark, the trees thick and foreboding, casting long shadows over the asphalt. The only light came from the headlights of my car, cutting through the darkness like a knife. I had no idea what I was walking into, but I couldn't stop now. I reached the cabin just after 3 a.m. The place looked just as it always had, isolated, untouched, forgotten. But something was different now. The air felt heavy, like it was thick with secrets. I parked the car and walked toward the front door, my steps echoing in the silence. My heart was pounding in my chest as I reached for the doorknob, but before I could open it, the door creaked open on its own. And that's when I saw her. Marissa stood there, her back to me, facing the dim light in the center of the room. Her hair hung loosely around her shoulders, her body tense as if she was waiting for something, or someone. And that's when everything changed. I stood there for a moment, frozen in place. Marissa's back was to me, but I could feel the tension in the air, thick and almost suffocating. I didn't move, didn't make a sound. I was waiting for her to turn around, to say something, anything. But she didn't. It was like she didn't even know I was there. The silence stretched on, unbearable. Every muscle in my body screamed for me to do something, but I couldn't. I just stood there, watching her. It wasn't until I stepped forward that she finally moved. Slowly, deliberately, she turned around. Her face was pale, her eyes red as if she hadn't slept in days. But it wasn't just the way she looked that caught me off guard. It was the way she felt. There was something distant in her eyes, something cold and unreadable. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me with that same unsettling expression. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught in my throat. My heart was racing. What was going on? Finally, she broke the silence. Why did you come here, Ted? Her voice was low, almost like a whisper. It was as if she was speaking to a stranger. I started, but I didn't know what to say. I had so many questions, but none of them seemed right in that moment. Marissa, what's going on? Why didn't you tell me? Why the secret? She shook her head slowly, the faintest hint of a smirk tugging at the corners of her mouth. You really don't get it, do you? It's already too late. Those words hit me like a slap to the face. Too late for what? I wanted to scream at her, demand answers, but I was paralyzed. My hands were shaking. I had never seen her like this, so distant, so different. I took a step closer, trying to make sense of everything. Please, just tell me the truth. Why are you acting like this? Why did you leave me in the dark? She didn't answer right away. Instead, her eyes shifted to the dark corner of the room. I followed her gaze, but saw nothing. The air seemed to grow colder, and I could feel a strange pressure building between us. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew I had to get her to talk. I'm not the person you think I am, Ted. Her voice was barely audible now, and her eyes glimmered with a mixture of fear and resolve. What does that mean? I demanded, my frustration bubbling to the surface. Her eyes met mine again, and for the first time, I saw something that resembled regret. You should have stayed away, Ted. Now you've seen too much. I took another step toward her, desperate for answers. Seen what? What the hell is going on? Who sent those messages? What does all of this mean? She took a step back, shaking her head as if she couldn't bear to look at me. You're not supposed to know this, Ted. You were never supposed to know. I felt like I was losing control of the situation. My mind was racing. What are you talking about? What aren't you telling me? She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, the door behind me slammed shut with a deafening bang. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. I hadn't seen anyone come in, but there was no mistaking it. Someone else was here. I turned back to Marissa, but she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was staring at the door, her face pale, eyes wide with fear. Marissa? I said, my voice trembling. What's going on? Her gaze flickered to me for a second, and then she whispered, You need to leave. Now. It's not safe here. I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, my brain struggling to make sense of what she was saying. Not safe. Who was she afraid of? I looked around, half expecting someone to step out from the shadows, but there was no one. It was just the two of us, alone in the cabin. Then I heard it, a soft noise, like footsteps approaching from the other side of the room. My blood ran cold as I realized I wasn't alone in here. Marissa, who's here? What's going on? My voice was barely more than a whisper, but she didn't answer. The footsteps grew louder, closer. I turned back to the door, my mind racing. What was happening? Before I could react, the figure stepped into the dim light. I didn't recognize him at first. He was tall, dressed in all black, his face hidden under a hood. But when he spoke, his voice sent a chill down my spine. You shouldn't have come, Ted, he said, his tone cold and flat. I took a step back, instinctively putting distance between us. Who are you? I demanded, my voice cracking with fear. What do you want with her? The man didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked at Marissa, his eyes dark and unreadable. She didn't seem to flinch or react. In fact, she was almost resigned, like she knew exactly what was happening. This is for your own good, Ted, the man said, his voice low and dangerous. But you've crossed a line. Now there's no going back. I didn't understand. What did he mean? Why did I feel like everything was spiraling out of control? But Marissa's next words made everything hit me all at once. You have to leave, Ted. For your own safety. This isn't your fight anymore. I was in shock. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Everything I thought I knew about her, about us, was crumbling. But as the man took a step forward, I realized something. I had no choice but to leave. Something had changed, and if I didn't get out now, I might never get out at all. Before I could turn and run, the man spoke again. Don't even think about it. You're already too late. My heart was pounding, my legs frozen to the floor. The man's voice echoed in the silence of the cabin, each word a sharp reminder that whatever I had walked into was far beyond my understanding. I wanted to move, to run, to escape. Anything to break the suffocating tension. But my feet wouldn't obey. Marissa stood motionless, her eyes avoiding mine. She hadn't said a word, not since she told me to leave. I looked at her desperately, hoping for some sign that this was all a misunderstanding, that this wasn't real. But there was nothing. She didn't even look scared. It was as though she had known this moment would come. I forced myself to speak, though my voice sounded foreign to me, trembling and weak. What is this? Who is this man? What are you involved in, Marissa? She took a slow breath, finally meeting my eyes. I never wanted you to find out, Ted. But now that you have, there's no turning back. Her words were calm, almost too calm, like she had rehearsed them 1,000 times. The man took another step forward, his eyes cold and calculating. She's right, he said, his voice chilling. There's no going back. You're already a part of something bigger than you realize. I backed away, my mind spinning. My thoughts were a chaotic mess, too many questions, too many things I couldn't comprehend. But one thing was clear, I was in over my head. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I married, was hiding something monstrous, and I had just stepped into the middle of it. I turned to the door, my instincts screaming at me to leave, but the man moved quickly, blocking my path. His presence was overwhelming, suffocating. You can't leave, Ted, he said simply, his eyes narrowing. You're already entangled in this. There's no escape. I tried to push past him, my fear giving me the strength to take a step toward the door. But before I could reach it, Marissa spoke again. Her voice was quiet but sharp. Ted, stop. Her words felt like a slap in the face. I never wanted you to get involved, but now that you have, you need to understand something. This isn't just about you or me anymore. It's about something much bigger. I turned back to her, my breath catching in my throat. What are you talking about? What is all this? For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Fear, maybe regret. She hesitated, and in that moment, it felt like the entire world was hanging on her next words. The people I work for, they won't let you go, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You're too close now. And I'm sorry, Ted, but there's nothing I can do to protect you. I was frozen. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to make her tell me everything. But the weight of her words sank in. I was already in too deep. There was no going back. The man's voice broke the silence. It's too late for questions, Ted. You should have never come here. I felt a sense of panic rising in me, a cold sweat forming on my skin. I had to get out. I had to run, but every instinct in me told me I was trapped. Please, I whispered, my voice cracking. Tell me what's going on. Who are you working for? What's happening? Marissa's expression softened for a moment, like she wanted to say something, but then she just shook her head. It's better if you don't know, Ted, she said. It's better for both of us. The man took another step forward, his cold gaze locked on mine. The decision has been made. You're a part of this now, whether you like it or not. I didn't know what to say, what to do. All the questions that had been racing through my mind only seemed to multiply. I had no idea what was happening, but I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer in control. This wasn't just about Marissa and me anymore. It was about something far darker, something that had dragged me into its web without my consent. The man's next words were like a death sentence. You're in this, Ted, and there's no way out. And then, as if on cue, the lights in the cabin flickered and went out, plunging us into darkness. I stood there in the pitch-black room, my heart pounding in my chest. The silence was deafening. I could hear Marissa's shallow breathing, the man's slow, deliberate footsteps, but nothing else. I couldn't see anything, couldn't make out any shapes in the darkness. My mind raced. What was happening? Where was I? And what the hell was going on with Marissa? I reached for my phone, hoping the dim screen would offer some light. But before I could turn it on, I heard a voice, so close, I could feel the breath on the back of my neck. Don't even think about it, the man whispered. You won't be able to run. Not now. I froze, paralyzed with fear. Something in his voice, something about the way he said those words made it clear. I wasn't going anywhere. I couldn't move, couldn't think. I was trapped, with nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The weight of the situation pressed down on me like a vice, and all I could do was wait for whatever came next. The cabin, the darkness, the strange man. Everything had turned into a nightmare that I couldn't escape. And the worst part? Marissa was still standing there, silent, distant, and completely unreachable. The woman I loved had become a stranger, and the world I thought I knew had shattered into pieces. The silence was suffocating. Every breath I took felt like it echoed in the darkness. I could barely make out the shapes in front of me, Marissa, the man, the faint outline of the cabin around us. But the darkness seemed to grow thicker by the second, like something was closing in. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that something was just waiting for me to make a move. My pulse raced, every nerve on edge, but I couldn't move. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Was I supposed to confront them? Run? But if I ran, where would I even go? The man took another step closer, his presence like a weight pressing down on me. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and almost suffocating. The cabin, once familiar, now felt like a prison. "You're still thinking about running, aren't you?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer. What was the point? He knew exactly what I was thinking. It was like he could read my mind. "You're trapped, Ted," he continued, almost casually. "There's nowhere to go. You've already stepped into something much bigger than you realize. You should have left when you had the chance." I swallowed hard, trying to gather the strength to say something, anything. But my throat felt tight. The fear gnawed at me, making it hard to think clearly. "What do you want from me?" I finally managed to ask, my voice trembling. The man didn't immediately respond. Instead, he turned to Marissa, as if waiting for some sort of signal from her. She didn't move, didn't react. She just stood there, her eyes locked on me with a cold detachment. It was as though the woman I had known, the woman I had loved, had disappeared, replaced by someone else entirely. "It's not about what we want, Ted," the man said, his eyes still on Marissa. "It's about what's already been set in motion. You're here now, and you can't undo it." I felt a cold dread creeping up my spine. "What are you talking about?" I asked, though I already knew deep down that I wasn't going to like the answer. The man finally turned to face me fully, his eyes dark and unwavering. "Marissa isn't who you think she is," he said, his words hitting me like a punch to the gut. I froze. The room seemed to tilt, and for a moment, I felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling away. "What do you mean?" I whispered, barely able to form the words. "She's been playing a part this whole time," the man continued, his voice low and full of menace. "And now, you're a part of it, whether you like it or not." I turned to Marissa, my heart pounding. "What is he talking about, Marissa?" I demanded. "What's going on?" She finally spoke, her voice distant and cold. "I never wanted you involved in this, Ted. But it's too late now. You're already part of the plan." The words didn't make sense. Plan? What plan? I felt my head spinning, my mind racing to make sense of everything. But nothing made sense. I took a step toward her, desperation flooding my voice. "What plan? What have you gotten me into, Marissa?" She didn't answer at first. She just stood there, looking at me with those same empty eyes. It was like she wasn't even her anymore. "You need to leave, Ted," she said, almost pleading now, "before it's too late." The man's hand shot out, grabbing her arm firmly. His grip was like iron, and I could see the muscles in his hand flexing, his face twisted with some dark intent. "She's right. You need to leave. But you're not going anywhere until we've finished what we started." I took a step back, a wave of panic crashing over me. "Finished what? What do you mean, finished?" He didn't respond immediately, but I could feel the tension mounting. The air in the room was thick with something, fear, anger, something else. And then, just as I thought I might lose control entirely, the man spoke again, his voice calm but cold. "You're not getting out of here, Ted. Not until we've seen this through. You've already crossed the line, and now you're in too deep." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "In too deep? What is this? What are you talking about?" Marissa's eyes flickered to me, then back to the man. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. It was like I was watching her fall further and further away, as though she was no longer the person I'd married. I didn't know what to do. Everything inside me screamed to run, to fight, to do something. But what was I supposed to fight against? Who were these people? What was happening to Marissa? And just as that thought hit me, I saw it, a movement in the shadows at the edge of the room. Something else was in the cabin. Someone, or something, was watching us. I wasn't alone. And that realization made everything even worse. My heart raced as I scanned the room. The darkness seemed to press in on me from every side. The man, Marissa, and the growing sense of dread. Nothing seemed real anymore. The room, the cabin, the people in front of me, all felt like some twisted nightmare. I could feel my pulse in my ears, but the footsteps in the shadows were louder, getting closer. Then I saw it. A faint movement just beyond the doorway. It was a figure, tall, and as the dim light flickered from the cabin's dying fire, I saw the outline of a person. No, not a person, something else. The way it moved was unnatural, too quick, too fluid, like it wasn't fully human. I felt my blood run cold. My mind couldn't process it. Was it another person? Was I imagining things? I couldn't think straight. But the man and Marissa didn't seem to react. They didn't even acknowledge the figure's presence. They just stood there, like everything was normal. That's when I realized. This wasn't normal. This was beyond anything I could have ever imagined. The man glanced at the figure in the shadows, his expression unchanged. "It's time, then," he said, as if we were just talking about a mundane errand, like the last few minutes hadn't been filled with tension, fear, and confusion. "Time for what?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. My throat felt dry, tight, like I couldn't get enough air into my lungs. The figure in the shadows took a step forward, and I saw its face for the first time. Pale, almost ghostly, with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. There was something otherworldly about it, something that sent an immediate chill through my entire body. "You're involved now, Ted," the man said, turning back to me. No turning back. My mind was racing. I had no idea what was happening. Marissa, the figure, the man, all of it felt like a surreal dream, but I knew it wasn't. It was real, and it was happening to me. "I don't understand," I stammered. "What is this? What do you want from me?" The man stepped closer, his cold eyes locking with mine. "We've been waiting for you," he said, his voice eerily calm. "You've been chosen. Now you'll play your part." The figure behind him took another step, its movements jerky and unsettling, like it was trying to force itself to move naturally. It stared at me, its glowing eyes never leaving my face. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But my body wouldn't obey. I was paralyzed, trapped in a nightmare I couldn't escape. The man turned back to Marissa. "Is he ready?" he asked, his tone almost like an order. Marissa didn't respond immediately. She stood there, her face blank, her eyes distant. She wasn't the woman I had married anymore. She was someone else, someone I couldn't understand. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft and detached. "He's here. It's too late to change things now." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. Too late to change things. I had no idea what they were talking about, but I could feel the darkness closing in, surrounding me. The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Good," he said. "Then let's begin." Before I could process what he meant by that, the figure in the shadows moved toward me, its face still unreadable, its eyes glowing with an unsettling intensity. And then everything shifted. The air grew colder, thicker. I could feel it, like the very walls of the cabin were closing in. The figure was almost upon me now, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. Panic surged through me. I had to get out of here. But there was nowhere to go. The door was blocked, and the only way out was through them, through whatever nightmare this had become. "You're part of this now, Ted," the man said again, his voice low and final. I turned to Marissa, desperate for some sign of the woman I once knew. But all I saw was a stranger, her eyes empty, her expression void of any emotion. The figure reached out toward me, and I felt a coldness unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't just the temperature. It was something deeper, something primal. It was as though this thing wasn't of this world. It was unnatural. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just trapped in a cabin. I was trapped in something much bigger, something I couldn't even begin to understand. And there was no way out. The figure in front of me moved closer, and the air grew even colder. I could see its breath, slow and deliberate, like a predator eyeing its prey. My heart hammered in my chest, and every instinct screamed at me to run, to fight, to do something. But my feet remained rooted to the floor, and my mind felt foggy, like I was watching myself from somewhere far away. Marissa's eyes never left me. She didn't say a word, but I could feel her presence in the room, as though she was just as trapped as I was. But there was no sign of panic in her expression. No fear. Just emptiness. The woman I knew, my wife, was gone. She wasn't just distant anymore. She was completely absent, as though someone else had taken her place. The man stepped forward, his shadow looming over me, his voice cold and almost amused. It's time for you to understand, Ted. You're part of something much bigger than you realize. Something that's been in motion long before you ever walked into this cabin. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. The panic was choking me now, a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Everything in my body was telling me to run, but there was nowhere to run to. The door was blocked. The walls seemed to close in. The figure was inches away now, and I could feel its cold presence, its otherworldly energy. It reached out, its fingers long and pale, moving toward me with a terrifying slowness. I recoiled instinctively, but my body wouldn't obey. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. It's already done, the man said, his voice a quiet whisper, but it felt like it was echoing in my mind. You've already crossed the threshold, Ted. There's no turning back now. You're bound to this, to her, to us. I tried to speak, to ask what he meant, but my voice failed me. Instead, my eyes darted from the man to Marissa. She hadn't moved, hadn't reacted to the figure in front of me. She just stared, her expression unreadable. But her gaze, it was cold, detached. I didn't recognize her anymore. The figure finally reached out and touched my shoulder, its fingers cold, like ice. A jolt of something electric shot through my body, and I felt the air leave my lungs. The pressure in my chest intensified, like I was drowning in invisible water. I gasped for air, but it was as if the room had become suffocating. I wanted to pull away, to escape, but the figure's grip tightened, and I felt something dark and unrelenting, begin to seep into me. It was like it was inside me, pulling at my very soul. You belong to us now. The figure's voice rasped, its words scratching at my ears. You're not just a part of this. You are it. I felt a surge of fear and anger, a desperate need to break free. But the harder I fought, the tighter the grip became. I felt my limbs growing heavier, my mind clouded with confusion and dread. The man stepped back, watching me with cold amusement. She tried to protect you, Ted, he said, nodding toward Marissa. But you were never meant to escape. You were always going to find out. And now you're part of something bigger, something you'll never understand. My head spun, trying to process everything. What do you mean? What are you? The man didn't answer. Instead, he glanced at the figure, and they shared a look, an understanding that I couldn't begin to grasp. You'll learn soon enough, the man said, his eyes darkening. But for now, you'll be kept here, where you belong. The figure's fingers tightened on my shoulder, and I felt my body being pulled forward, like gravity itself was shifting, dragging me towards something I couldn't see. The room began to blur at the edges, the light dimming, and for a moment, I felt like I was falling. And then everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in the cabin anymore. The air was thick, oppressive. The shadows seemed to stretch endlessly around me, and the world itself felt wrong. I couldn't explain it, but it was as though reality had twisted, and I was no longer in the place I once knew. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond the way I expected. It was as though I was walking through a dream, each step slow and disjointed. I looked around, searching for anything familiar, but all I saw were shifting, formless shapes in the distance. The shadows stretched out into an infinite darkness, and for a split second, I thought I could hear whispers, low, guttural voices murmuring something I couldn't understand. And then, I saw her. Marissa stood there, bathed in the dim, unnatural light, her eyes locked onto mine. But she wasn't the same. There was no warmth in her gaze, no emotion, just emptiness. Marissa, I called out, my voice shaky. But it was like my words didn't even reach her. She didn't move. She didn't respond. Something was horribly wrong. Something I couldn't comprehend. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just in another place. I was in another reality. And it was here that I was going to remain. Forever. I stood there, my heart racing, the weight of everything crashing down on me. I wasn't just in a different place. I was trapped in a different reality. The air felt thick, heavy, suffocating. The shadows around me whispered, their voices faint but insistent, like they were trying to tell me something I couldn't quite hear. I turned back to Marissa. Her face, once so full of life and warmth, was now nothing but a hollow mask. But this time, something was different. Her eyes, those cold, empty eyes, began to flicker. For the first time since I arrived, I saw a flicker of recognition, a spark of something familiar behind the emptiness. "Marissa," I whispered again, my voice trembling with hope. Her lips trembled, as if she was struggling to say something. The figure beside her, the one that had once seemed so menacing, paused, as if waiting for something. Slowly, Marissa took a step toward me, her eyes never leaving mine. "I'm sorry, Ted," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "I never wanted you to get caught up in this. But I couldn't stop it. I couldn't protect you from this world." I felt a rush of emotions flood through me. Fear, confusion, but also something else. Hope. "Then help me, Marissa. Please, help me get out of here." I took a step closer, my heart pounding in my chest. She looked down for a moment, her face filled with a quiet sadness. But then, she met my eyes again. For the first time, her gaze wasn't empty. It was full of love, full of longing, and a deep regret. "I can't undo what's been done," she said softly. "But there's still a way out. If you want it. If you believe in it." The figure beside her stepped back, as if acknowledging something between them, something unsaid. I didn't fully understand it, but in that moment, I knew Marissa was still Marissa. She was still the woman I loved. She just needed to believe in herself again, believe that she could fight back against whatever had taken her from me. "Do you trust me, Ted?" she asked, her voice filled with determination. I nodded, feeling a rush of warmth in my chest. "I trust you. Always." For the first time since I'd stepped into this nightmare, I felt a spark of hope. The shadows around me seemed to recede, just slightly, as if they were unsure of what to do with this new energy. Marissa reached out, her hand trembling as she grasped mine. As our fingers intertwined, I felt a surge of warmth rush through me, like a tether pulling me back toward reality. The oppressive air lightened. The darkness that had once felt so consuming began to fade, the whispers growing quieter, more distant. "You can do this, Ted," she whispered. "You can find your way back. And I'll be with you, no matter where you go." And then, with a deep breath, the world around us shifted. The shadows disappeared, and I felt the ground beneath me stabilize. The oppressive weight of the alternate reality was gone, and for the first time, I felt free. The cabin I had been trapped in reappeared around us, its warmth now tangible. The air smelled fresh, clean, like a long-awaited breath of freedom. The man who had once held us captive was nowhere to be seen. The figure that had haunted us vanished without a trace. Marissa looked at me, her eyes filled with emotion, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she smiled. It wasn't the empty smile of someone lost in another world. It was her smile. The one that had always made me feel like everything was going to be okay. "Let's go home, Ted," she said softly, her hand still holding mine. And for the first time in a long while, I believed her. We walked out of the cabin together, the sun rising on the horizon. The world outside was bathed in soft light, and I felt the warmth of it on my skin. We weren't out of danger yet, but I knew that as long as we faced it together, nothing could stop us. It wasn't the end of the story, but it was the beginning of something new, something hopeful. And with Marissa by my side, I knew we would find our way through anything that came our way. Because in the end, love always finds a way.